Right then, welcome back. Episode 7, The HODLing Room, world's greatest book club. I've messed it up. World's greatest Bitcoin book club. The only one, but still the best. And therefore also the worst.
By default.
By default. How are you doing, Mike?
All right, yeah. How are you?
I'm good. I'm bloody good. You were just
Excited
saying
for your car boot sale?
Yeah, I got car boot sale tomorrow. That should be fun. Doing it with my mum. And basically went to my mum's house yesterday and just raided my old bedroom and found loads of old stuff that I didn't even know I had from when I was a kid. And basically just going to do a huge car boot sale, get rid of loads of tat, and then everything that we make, I'm going to put into the Bitcoin fund. I'm also thinking of printing out like a little piece of paper for the stand and just being like, we accept Bitcoin. Probably nobody's going to know, but it may spark up a few conversations. But if somebody wants to pay in Lightning, then yeah, I'm more than happy to do that.
Oh, that'd be so good.
And
you can orange pill someone while you're there.
Exactly. So that should be an interesting thing. I'll film it for a video as well, and we'll see what happens. But I found loads of old stuff as well, that old like Game Boys and Nintendo stuff from the 90s, which I think, is going to be worth a fair amount. So I'm probably going to eBay a lot of the like collectible stuff, because car boots is more for like stuff which is like £1 or £2, just old bits and bobs. So yeah, we'll see how we get on.
Do you know what? I was just, when you were saying that, I was thinking that'd be such a good way to orange pill someone, is like going to a car boot sale but actually buying stuff and being like, I'm only going to buy it if you can accept Bitcoin. So download Satoshi, because I think it'll be harder doing it your way, because they would have to put fiat into their wallet, which is just it's another step. Whereas if you're sending them Satoshis, it's much easier just to say like, download wallet of Satoshi, scan, there you go. There's some Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Thank me in 10 years.
Yeah, whether they'll bother if it's like a 50p kind of like Toy Story thing.
Yeah, but like say I'll buy that, even say they're selling it for 50p, so I'll buy it for 75p if you use Bitcoin or something, like,
Yeah.
That'd be such a good way to like orange pill some people, I reckon.
Yeah, or we have the stall, but it's like, if you buy it in Bitcoin, I'll give you 50% off.
Yeah.
People will be like, what? 50% off?
Yes, do that.
And then they'll be like, well, what's this whole Bitcoin thing about then?
Do that.
Yeah, that would be good.
Have a little sign.
Yeah. 99% off if you buy Bitcoin. So yeah, we'll see how we get on. You were just saying about you got a rental property or something that you had.
So it will be selling next month, because it's technically being sold through auction, whereas it's actually not. It was a pre-auction offer. It's like technicalities or whatever. But the agency that I was using, that estate agent, whatever you want to call them, they have done this a few times before, because what they do is they put it on for what seems like a really low price. They get loads of interest, and then they kind of play people off each other and get the kind of price that we were looking for. So, and then they just put it up for. They get the pre-auction offers. If they don't get any pre-auction offers, they wouldn't actually put it in auction. So it's kind of like a risk-free strategy, if that makes sense. So they're not actually planning to put it to auction unless they have 2 or 3 offers that are similar, and they think they can get more by a bidding war on the day.
So you had that as a money-making side hustle, or?
Yeah, it's called a HMO, so house and multiple occupancy. The idea, so this is when, I don't know, I moved to Qatar in 2015, and like when I moved there, it was like the first time where I was actually able to save some money. And so, but I just knew, me and my wife, I was like, if we don't have a plan here, we're just going to spend this. Like, we'll just go on nicer holidays, and lifestyle will creep in. So we, everything was a shared decision, obviously mainly pushed by me, but like she was in on everything. And then so we were like, well, if we can save this much, so we did the whole pay yourself first. The Robert Kiyosaki Rich Dad Poor Dad thing. Pay yourself first, and that money then. But I knew we needed something to do with it. Otherwise, we're just going to sit there and we'll just be like, oh, we'll get a nicer car, or like whatever it is. You'll always find some way to spend it.
Yeah.
So the plan was property, and looked at a few different options. And what we were thinking is, if we can cover our monthly expenses, then we can basically both retire and then do whatever business or whatever we want, like grow the property more or something like that. And so what was kind of the idea was go down this house share route so we bought I think it was a 3-bed in Derby and converted it into a 7-bed, all with like en suites and stuff. It was done to a decent standard. It is a really nice place, to be fair. And then you rent out each room, so you can earn way more. And then the idea is then you get like £800 a month. You get 3 or 4 of them, and then that's enough. That'll cover your expenses, and you can live anywhere, and the whole retire early, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas it just doesn't. It just doesn't work like that. On paper, it all worked great, but like the development took way longer. It was there were so many issues along the way. It ended up costing more. We had to. I don't think anyone really talks as well about like solicitor costs. Like we had to get a bridging loan as well for that, so that was crazy high interest rate. And it's just all these fees and stuff that just appear. And I went to some like courses or meetups and stuff like that, and they call it like shovel. It's just a shovel to dig for gold. Don't worry about the shovel. You're digging for gold. But the shovels are freaking more expensive than the gold. So it's like it's crazy. Like the solicitor costs. I've got a spreadsheet with everything that we've spent over the years and what we've taken in and everything. But it's insane. It's in like the tens of thousands that have just gone on like solicitor costs for nothing, for just getting a refinance or something, or, when we first bought it, and then each time something's done, we've had an absolute nightmare with our most recent refinance, which is what just convinced me. It's like, I just need to get rid of this. The amount of time and effort. Yeah. And like in this last 2 months, it has pretty much been like a part-time job keeping up with like solicitor emails back and forth, and oh my god, yeah, it was just a nightmare. And everyone will have a different experience, and I think if you just buy a house and put a family in it and don't do any of this refurb and try and get your money back out and all of that sort of stuff, then sure, it will keep up with inflation and it'll be better than putting your money in the bank. But the issue is once you understand Bitcoin, it's like, why would I do that? Like, why would I want to just keep up with inflation and take on the extra risk? And then you've got repairs and maintenance and all these other stuff. It doesn't make any sense. And I think people are going to figure this out.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing as well, is that I just don't know how long it's going to take for people to figure it out. But prices could genuinely like go down, or if the money printer is going up crazy, it just won't keep up with it, because people will figure this out, and they are figuring it out.
So what's your plan to do with what? So you're selling it, yeah?
Yeah.
And what's your plan to do with that cash after? You're just going to let it sit in the bank, buy some bonds?
Yeah, well, it's just Bitcoin, really.
Really?
Yeah, 100%. Because there is no second best.
Well, I don't blame you, but that's a big move. It's a bold move.
Yeah, but it doesn't even feel like that to me now. It feels the least risky thing to do. But what I might do, just because I'm a degen at heart, like I will probably put like half in Bitcoin and then wait until the end of 2026.
Half in Dogecoin.
No, absolutely not. I'm done with all shit coins. Been there, done that. Got the t-shirt, but I've still got some stuff in some random crap. But within these next few months, it's all coming out. And but yeah, I do. I'm a big believer in the cycle still. I don't think the 4-year cycles are over.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I have an amount of Bitcoin that I'm never going to sell, sort of thing. It just sits in a cold storage, and like that's it, like. And then the idea is then to top that up. So that stuff I'm not going to be messing around with. Whereas all the shit coins and the property and stuff like that, it's like, how can I do this in a way where it's for like maximum benefit?
That makes sense.
Yeah. So probably, I think what I am probably going to do is use half, buy Bitcoin, save the other half in cash, just because I think next year we'll
wait for the dip.
Whether it goes up to 500 and comes back to where it is now, I don't know. But I think there will be a stage towards the end of next year where it will be obvious that, okay, that's the time. People don't want Bitcoin anymore. People really don't believe in it. It's going to zero. That's the time, because I've already been through it in November 2022. I remember seeing it, being like, this is the time but I didn't really have too much like expendable cash at that time. We finished our jobs in Qatar that year, and what they do in Qatar as well is they give you what's called a gratuity, which is like you get 3 weeks pay for each year that you worked, and just as a bonus when you leave.
That's nice.
So yeah, when we got that basically went into Bitcoin, and that was good. That was handy. But that was more like June 2023. So it had moved a bit from there, but it was still way better than where it is now, sort of thing. But that's the loose plan anyway.
Very cool. Well, keep me updated. Sounds good. Right then, so we're on World War II and Bretton Woods. Chapter 4, Government Money. So, from the sky, the bombs did drop, along with countless heretofore unimaginable forms of murder and horror. The war machines that the government-directed economies built were far more advanced than any the world had ever seen, thanks to the popularity of the most dangerous and absurd of all the Keynesian fallacies, the notion that government spending on military effort would aid economic recovery. All spending is spending in the naive economics of Keynesians, and so it matters not if that spending comes from individuals feeding their families or governments murdering foreigners. It all counts in aggregate demand, and it all reduces unemployment. I think that's a bit sarcastic there. As an increasing number of people went hungry during the Depression, all major governments spent generously on arming themselves, and the result was a return to the senseless destruction of 3 decades earlier. That's an interesting point. It's like, yeah, the economy's great, the economy's booming, but it could be because they've literally just like spent billions of dollars bombing another country in the Middle East or whatever. To them, it's all the same thing. For Keynesian economists, the war was what caused economic recovery, and if one looked at life merely through the lens of statistical aggregates collected by government bureaucrats, such a ridiculous notion is tenable. With government war expenditure and conscription on the rise, aggregate expenditure soared while unemployment plummeted. So all countries involved in World War II had recovered because of their participation in the war. That's another interesting point. It's like, you conscript everybody to the army, it's like, unemployment's the lowest ever. We're doing so great. It's like, yeah, because you just drafted everybody to go and fight. Anybody not afflicted with Keynesian economics, however, can realize that life during World War II, even in countries that did not witness war on their soil, like the United States, cannot by any stretch of the imagination be characterized as economic recovery. On top of the death and destruction, the dedication of so much of the capital and labor resources of the belligerent countries to the war effort meant severe shortages of output at home, resulting in rationing and price controls. In the United States, construction of new housing and repair of existing housing were banned. More obviously, one cannot possibly argue that soldiers fighting and dying at war fronts, who constituted a large percentage of the populations of belligerent nations, enjoyed any form of economic recovery, no matter how much aggregate expenditure went into making the weapons they were carrying. But one of the most devastating blows to Keynesian theories of the aggregate demand as the determinant of the state of the economy came in the aftermath of World War II, particularly in the United States. A confluence of factors had conspired to reduce government spending drastically, leading to Keynesian economists of the era predicting doom and gloom to follow the war. The end of military hostilities reduced government military spending dramatically. The death of the populist and powerful FDR and his replacement by the meeker and less iconic Truman, coming up against a Congress controlled by Republicans, created political deadlock that prevented the renewal of the statutes of the New Deal. All of these factors together, when analysed by Keynesian economists, would point to impending disaster. As Paul Samuelson, the man who literally wrote the textbooks for economic education in the post-war era, wrote in 1943, quote, "The final conclusion to be drawn from our experience at the end of the last war is inescapable. Were the war to end suddenly within the next 6 months, were we again planlessly to wind up our war effort in the greatest haste, to demobilize our armed forces, to liquidate price controls, to shift from astronomical deficits to even the large deficits of the 30s, then there would be ushered in the greatest period of unemployment and industrial dislocation which any economy has ever faced." The end of World War II and the dismantling of the New Deal meant the US government cut its spending by an astonishing 75% between 1944 and 1948, and it also removed most price controls for good measure. And yet the US economy witnessed an extraordinary boom during these years. The roughly 10 million men who were mobilized for the war came back home and were almost seamlessly absorbed into the labor force. As economic production boomed, flying in the face of all Keynesian predictions and utterly obliterating the ridiculous notion that the level of spending is what determines output in the economy. As soon as governmental central planning had abated for the first time since the 1929 crash, and as soon as prices were allowed to adjust freely, they served their role as the coordinating mechanism for economic activity, matching sellers and buyers, incentivizing the production of goods demanded by consumers, and compensating workers for their effort. The situation was far from perfect, though, as the world remained off the gold standard, leading to ever-present distortions of the money supply which would continue to dog the world economy with crisis after crisis. It is well known that history is written by the victors, but in the era of government money, victors get to decide on the monetary systems too. The United States summoned representatives of its allies to Bretton Woods in New Hampshire to discuss formulating a new global trading system. History has not been very kind to the architects of this system. Britain's representative was none other than John Maynard Keynes, whose economic teachings were to be wrecked on the shores of reality in the decades following the war, while America's representative, Harry Dexter White, would later be uncovered as a communist who was in contact with the Soviet regime for many years. In the battle for centrally planned global monetary orders, White was to emerge victorious with a plan that even made Keynes look not entirely unhinged. The United States was to be the center of the global monetary system, with its dollars being used as a global reserve currency by other central banks whose currencies would be convertible to dollars at fixed exchange rates, while the dollar itself would be convertible to gold at a fixed exchange rate. To facilitate this system, the United States would take gold from other countries' central banks. Whereas the American people were still prohibited from owning gold, the US government promised to redeem dollars in gold to other countries' central banks at a fixed rate, opening what was known as the gold exchange window. In theory, the global monetary system was still based on gold, and if the US government had maintained convertibility to gold by not inflating the dollar supply beyond their gold reserves, while other countries had not inflated their money supply beyond their dollar reserves, the monetary system would have been effectively been close to the gold standard of the pre-World War I era. They did not, of course, and in practice the exchange rates were anything but fixed, and provisions were made for allowing governments to alter these rates to address a, quote, fundamental disequilibrium, end quote. So it could have been good, but it wasn't.
Yeah, I do think the theory behind it is like it's meant to be a good idea. It just isn't thought all the way through. So I personally, I always try and look at things with like seeing good in people, and I think all the decisions that have been made were intended to be good, sort of thing. Including what happens in 1971. I don't. It's just like he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. I don't think Nixon is really evil and he's decided to do it. You know, it's just like, what else are you going to do? You're going to let your country go completely bankrupt, and obviously not. So you've got to do something, and that is pretty much the only thing to do. It's just really hard, because once you start doing this, it's just so hard to be the person in charge when it all comes tumbling down, sort of thing. And really, that's what has to happen for anything to reset.
Yeah, I think even Woodrow Wilson, when that Federal Reserve Act came in, I think he thought he was doing something beneficial. I think that the Warburgs and whatnot were not doing that. I think that banking cartel knew exactly what they were doing, but they just duped people into doing it.
Yeah, I should have said that. I'm sure there are people that really did understand what they were doing. But a lot of like the puppeteers, the presidents in charge, did not.
They get sold,
they
get sold.
They are trying to do good, a lot of them. Anyway.
In order to manage this global system of hopefully fixed exchange rates and address any potential fundamental disequilibrium, the Bretton Woods Conference established the International Monetary Fund, which acted as a global coordination body between central banks with the express aim of achieving stability of exchange rates and financial flows. In essence, Bretton Woods attempted to achieve through central planning what the international gold standard of the 19th century had achieved spontaneously. Under the classical gold standard, the monetary unit was gold, while capital and goods flowed freely between countries, spontaneously adjusting flows without any need for central control or direction, and never resulting in balance of payment crises. Whatever amount of money or goods moved across borders did so at the discretion of its owners, and no macroeconomic problems could emerge. In the Bretton Woods system, however, governments were dominated by Keynesian economists who viewed activist, fiscal and monetary policy as a natural and important part of government policy. The constant monetary and fiscal management would naturally lead to the fluctuation of the value of national currencies, resulting in imbalances in trade and capital flows. When a country's currency is devalued, its products become cheaper to foreigners, leading to more goods leaving the country, while holders of the currency seek to purchase foreign currencies to protect themselves from devaluation. As devaluation is usually accompanied by artificially low interest rates, capital seeks exit from the country to go where it can be better rewarded, exacerbating the devaluation of the currency. On the other hand, countries which maintain their currency better than others would thus witness an influx of capital whenever their neighbours devalued, leading to their currency appreciating further. Devaluation would sow the seeds of more devaluation, whereas currency appreciation would lead to more appreciation, creating a problematic dynamic for the two governments. It's just like, value flows to the soundest asset, the soundest currency. This is just what happens. Literally, the word is equilibrium. Like, it's almost like one of the laws of physics. It's like you got a pressurized, container, and then you get rid of that. It naturally tries to seek balance and equilibrium. It looks like the same happens in the economy as well. No such problems could exist with the gold standard, where the value of the currency in both countries was constant because it was gold, and movements of goods and capital would not affect the value of the currency. Next page.
Sure.
The automatic adjustment mechanisms of the gold standard had always provided a constant measuring rod against which all economic activity was measured, but the floating currencies gave the world economy imbalances. The International Monetary Fund's role was to perform an impossible balancing act between all the world's governments to attempt to find some form of stability or equilibrium. In this mess, keeping exchange rates within some arbitrary range of predetermined values while trade and capital flows were moving and altering them. But without a stable unit of account for the global economy, this was a task as hopeless as attempting to build a house with an elastic measuring tape whose own length varied each time it was used. It's almost like the IMF or the anti-free market company. It's like, right, free market is just balance itself out. These things constantly seeking equilibrium. But let's just put in this centralized planner that just goes against the free market. Let's just centralize it to the point of absurdity.
Yeah, again, it just comes down to the impact of state. But if state just don't get involved, if governments and people just leave it to the free market, it sorts itself out. Mm-hmm. It's not perfect. Of course, there's going to be booms and busts, and there'll be times of hard, where times are hard, but it will be shorter, sharper, correct itself, and then it will, just like nature does, forest fires and things like that, gets rid of the dead wood, sorts it out, and then it can grow healthily again, rather than having a load of dead wood.
Yeah, it's more organic way of just letting things happen.
Yeah.
Along with the establishment of the World Bank and IMF in Bretton Woods, the United States and its allies wanted to establish another international financial institution to specialize in arranging trade policy. The initial attempt to establish an international trade organization failed after the US Congress refused to ratify the treaty, but a replacement was sought in the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, commencing in 1948. GATT, was meant to help the IMF in the impossible task of balancing budgets and trade to ensure financial stability. In other words, centrally planning global trade and fiscal and monetary policy to remain in balance, as if such a thing were possible. An important but often overlooked aspect of the Bretton Woods system was that most of the member countries had moved large amounts of their gold reserves to the United States and received dollars in exchange, at a rate of $35 per ounce. The rationale was that the US dollar would be the global currency for trade, and central banks would trade through it and settle their accounts in it, obviating the need for the physical movement of gold. In essence, this system was akin to the entire world economy being run as one country on a gold standard, with the US Federal Reserve acting as the world's central bank and all the world's central banks as regional banks. The main difference being that the monetary discipline of the gold standard was almost entirely lost in this world, where there were no effective controls on all central banks in expanding the money supply, because no citizens could redeem their government money for gold. Only governments could redeem their dollars in gold from the United States, but that was to prove far more complicated than expected. Today, each ounce of gold for which foreign central banks receive $35 is worth in excess of $1,200. It seems to me like this issue that they were trying to solve by having the gold standard that you couldn't transport easily, so they were making this paper money on top and then becoming the global reserve currency and having the dollar as that. It seems to me that Bitcoin, this is a cliche thing, but Bitcoin fixes all of this. Like, this disparity between the actual bearer asset of gold and then this paper IOU on top. Well, Bitcoin is the actual asset, and you can transport it easily and cheaply. So it fixes this entire thing. So it would surely be beneficial to these guys to use Bitcoin instead of let's put it this way, it would be beneficial to the governments to use Bitcoin instead. However, we're up against this central bank cartel who love printing cash and power, this private group of people. So to them, it doesn't benefit them because,
That's exactly it. But it was also really hard. Like even, from today, we couldn't just go completely in the Bitcoin standard tomorrow, because that basically means all subsidies, all government intervention, all any money that the government gives anyone would be taken away, because the government is basically obsolete.
Mm.
So it would cause absolute chaos. If you think about just how many jobs are created within the government itself,
Mm-hmm.
they would all be gone.
Yeah.
Banks would all be gone. So it would be mass unemployment at the same time as no support given to anyone. So only people that own Bitcoin would benefit in the short term, but eventually everyone would benefit. And I think that's the bit it's really hard to predict what is going to happen from today to get there. But it is slowly happening already, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Monetary expansionism became the new global norm, and the tenuous link that the system had to gold proved powerless to stop the debauching of global currencies and the constant balance of payment crises affecting most countries. The United States, however, was put in a remarkable position, similar to, though massively exceeding in scope, the Roman Empire's pillaging and inflating the money supply used by most of the old world. With its currency distributed all over the world and central banks having to hold it as a reserve to trade with one another, the US government could accrue significant seigniorage from expanding the supply of dollars, and also had no reason to worry about running a balance of payment deficit. French economist Jacques Rueff coined the phrase deficit without tears to describe the new economic reality that the United States inhabited, where it could purchase whatever it wanted from the world and finance it through debt monetized by inflating the currency that the entire world used. The relative fiscal restraint of the first few years after World War II soon gave way to the politically irresistible temptation of buying free lunches through inflation, particularly to the warfare and welfare states. The military industry that prospered during World War II grew into what President Eisenhower called the military-industrial complex, an enormous conglomerate of industries that was powerful enough to demand ever more funding from the government and drive US foreign policy toward an endless series of expensive conflicts with no rational end goal or clear objective. The doctrine of violent militant Keynesianism claimed this spending would be good for the economy, which made the millions of lives it destroyed easier to stomach for the American electorate. This war machine was also made more palatable for the American people because it came from the same politicians who intensified government welfare in various shapes and forms. This is why it's such a foundational and important issue, this whole fiat system, is because, as it says here, it's not just about, the price of eggs are going up. It's, I've got to work a few extra hours. It's not, it's literally funding this war machine that says claimed millions of lives.
Yeah.
There's literally, it's the most demonic system you could ever possibly imagine.
Yeah. No, I've just trying to figure out how to explain this simply. This might help a little bit because it's quite a lot that has happened in the last, the last episode and then this one. But I thought this was quite a nice summary. So the simple version of what happened was World War One broke everything, basically. Countries printed loads of money to pay for the war. Mm-hmm. Whereas if they just were on a fixed gold standard, which they were up until 1914, once they ran out of gold, the war would have ended. Mm-hmm. And so we spoke about that before as well. And I think he speaks about this in the book. So what then happened in the 20s is that this is where the previous episode where we spoke about how they set fake exchange rates.
Yeah.
And this kind of impacted everyone because what started happening, Britain, the British pound was the reserve currency at that time. So everyone was using the British pounds instead of gold. And then that's when Britain printed way more pounds than they had gold. So what happened in Britain is what happened in the US in 1971, but this happened in Britain in 1931. So Britain went bankrupt, which is, again, what happened with the US in 1971, and people couldn't get their gold for pounds. So everyone panics. They all just abandon gold and print money like crazy. And then there's the trade war because each country tries to make their money cheaper to help exports, which is basically printing more money. And this is still continues today, with China.
Tariffs and whatnot.
Yeah, well, China tries to keep their exchange rate as low as possible. They try and keep their currency weak because then that means that people will want to do trade with them. So
Okay.
this is how they've become, like, everyone knows, oh, you go to China to buy things for cheap. And this is because China always to try to keep their currency cheaper
Don't
compared
they
to
have
elsewhere.
two currencies as well? Like there's one which is internal for Chinese use only, and
Oh,
then
really? I didn't know that.
yeah, I did hear this. There's like there's like
Isn't it
the
the yuan?
yen and the yuan or something. Like one of them is
Oh.
the internal currency for Chinese use only, which may be maybe stronger than the international. They've got like a domestic and then a foreign separate currency. I did hear that. I may be wrong.
The yen and yuan sign. Oh. Yeah.
So maybe
could well be.
they keep the international one weak for trade, but then
Right.
internally they've got a stronger currency. That seems to be an interesting way to do it.
Yeah. But yeah, then with obviously everyone printing more and more and becoming cheaper, that's what basically caused the Great Depression, because there was no stable money, and so international trade just stopped because it was like it just broke the whole system basically. And then this is where the whole Triffin dilemma and stuff like that happened. Where
What is that?
It's a good question. I've just been asking that to explain it more simply. It's basically where the two choices were both bad.
Right.
So either they print and here we go. So this is basically it. So they print responsibly, which starves the world of the needed dollars, which equals the global recession. So this would have been the responsible thing to do, is they just stop printing like crazy. But this is exactly what I mean, how if it was left to a free market, we wouldn't even be in this mess, because the wars would have ended sooner. The World War I would have ended sooner. It would have been shit for a few years, and then it would have sorted itself out and it would come back stronger. But because they printed, it went on longer. They got in way more trouble. And then rather than just leaving it then, they then fixed the price of the dollars compared to gold, which then just caused all of this issue, meaning that they had to print more and more and more, and it created the issue. So by this stage, say we're already in this stage now where they've already done all this printing, their two choices now are go back to print responsibly, and then it just means there's going to be a global recession because there's not enough dollars floating around for the amount of goods that people are trading. Or they can print what's needed, and then exactly what the US ends up doing, eventually go bankrupt when everyone wants their gold back.
Yeah.
Because they basically, this shows it here, by the time it gets to 1971, they only have $10 billion worth of gold, but they've sent out US dollars of 80 billion plus, which they call treasuries or bonds or whatever they want to call them. They're basically just claims to the US dollar. So there is, if everyone, it only takes a tenth of the people to start asking for their gold back, and then the US is bankrupt.
Yeah. It was a bank run on the country, basically.
Exactly. And that's what happened to Britain as well in 1931. But I thought that was just helpful just to see, because there's a lot that's kind of just been said.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Where did I get up to? Oh yeah, 1,000. So monetary. Oh wait, I was on this side, wasn't I? The relative fiscal restraint of the first few years after World War II soon gave way to the politically irresistible temptation of buying free lunches through inflation, particularly to the warfare and welfare states. The military-industrial industry that prospered during World War II grew into what President Eisenhower called the military-industrial complex. I did read this, but I'll go over it again. An enormous conglomerate of industries that was powerful enough to demand ever more funding from the government and drive US foreign policy toward an endless series of expensive conflicts with no rational end goal or clear objective. The doctrine of violent militant Keynesianism claimed this spending would be good for the economy, which made the millions of lives it destroyed easy to stomach for the American electorate. This war machine was also made more palatable for the American people because it came from the same politicians who intensified government welfare in various shapes and forms. That's interesting. So you get people dependent on government welfare, dependent on this system, and then they're less likely to criticize it because they're dependent upon it. I heard a saying once, it was something like, don't bite the hand that feeds you until you can feed yourself. And it's almost like you create the conditions where everybody is dependent upon handouts from this military industrial war machine. They ain't going to say shit because they need it to live. So it's almost like this kind of cognitive dissonance or like Stockholm syndrome that you've got with your state, that they may or may not want to create, dependence upon them, because then it's going to reduce criticism of them as well. So this warfare and welfare literally goes hand in hand, as it says.
Yeah,
that's mental.
That's literally the situation we're in today. And like I say, that's why we couldn't just go to a sound monetary system tomorrow, because there's so many people that are dependent on it. So that it's not a choice. It's not like, if I was the Prime Minister of the UK, I wouldn't just go, all right, no more welfare, no more any of this for anyone. But again, because it's only like a 4-year term, it's really hard. Whereas if you had like a 10 or 20-year term where you say, look, this is the 20-year plan. We want to get everyone using a global free market, the first ever global free market, which means all government jobs are going to disappear. They're basically going to become obsolete. But again, that's not going to be, no one in your party is going to vote for that because that's their job. So it's like, it's impossible. It's like going back to Hayek and what he said, the only way is to create a sneaky workaround that does it for us. Like, no one's going to willingly do this. Even most people are not going to say, yeah, I just want to lose my job and not have any income, not have any welfare from the state. Who's going to vote for that? Who's going to want that? So it is really, really hard. And there is no obvious answer other than it's slowly happening over time.
Yeah, like imagine the whole COVID thing if they didn't have the free money. It was like, oh, we're gonna close everything down, and you're gonna have to do all this and that. It's like, what? Oh, but we'll give you free money.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's fine then. Go on then.
Stay quiet.
Yeah, literally, yeah, hush money.
Yeah.
I was reading in that Federal Reserve book as well that, along with the Federal Reserve Act, when that came in, one of the like stipulations with it was they extended the term time of like the governor of I'll be making a hash out of this, but it's something like they basically extended the term time for the chairman of the Fed to something like 10 or 12 years to outlast any presidential term, which is at 4 years or max 8 years. So at any point, if there was a president that came in that was critical of the Fed, well, the Fed chairman term time would outlast any critical president, which is basically a workaround so no president could ever get rid of them, because
that's what's happening now.
Yeah, because by the time, basically it was like a waiting game, who would outlast the other. Well, the president's term time is always going to be capped shorter than the Fed chairman because they increase the length of that. And then if anybody is critical, like, or decides to print their own money, like Kennedy greenbacks, just blow the head off. So there we go. Where did we get up to? I'll read that one again because I was interested. This war machine was also made more palatable for the American people because it came from the same politicians who intensified government welfare in various shapes and forms. From the Great Society to affording housing, education and healthcare, fiat money allowed the American electorate to ignore the laws of economics and believe that a free lunch, or at least a perpetually discounted one, was somehow possible. In the absence of gold convertibility and with the ability to disperse the costs of inflation on the rest of the world, the only winning political formula consisted of increasing government spending financed by inflation, and every single presidential term in the post-war era witnessed a growth in government expenditure and the national debt and a loss of the purchasing power of the dollar. In the presence of fiat money to finance government, political differences between parties disappear as politics no longer contain trade-offs and every candidate can champion every cause. So yeah, it's just basically a whole fake. The whole thing's fake.
Yeah. And again, it just wouldn't happen if it stayed on a global free market. But as soon as it comes off, it becomes increasingly hard to go back to. I think that's something I only really figured out recently, is that, like I say, I don't think there's any one president who's been really evil and is like, I'm going to destroy the US or whatever. It's just been they're just stuck between a rock and a hard place. It is Triffin's dilemma. Either choice, either they create austerity and chaos and lose tons of people's jobs, and which will come with riots. You know, people will just be looting shops because they literally can't feed themselves.
Yeah.
So that's one option, or you kick the can down the road and you keep printing. And you just hope it doesn't all collapse on your watch. And everyone chooses that second option.
Exactly, yeah. That's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
Is that your doorbell?
That is, yeah. I think that's my kids.
It's the feds.
Let me just... Yeah, I was just getting up the current debt and stuff.
Is that... In America, it's at like 36 or 37 trillion. Have you ever been on that website, which is like usdebtclock.com or anything like that? That's mental.
It's just literally like ticking up, isn't it?
It's like...
Can you hear that?
No.
I think it was a YouTube video. It just started playing. Where did that just go? This one? There you go. So what I wanted to do is compare it to like education, healthcare, but it hasn't quite done that. Oh, has it done it on here?
$640 billion in interest payments.
It's more than that though now. So this must be out of date. Yeah, because I literally just did this on the video. Yeah, so this is 2024. It's actually about 1.2 trillion now. It's catching up
annual
to
interest payments.
Yeah, so it's catching up to healthcare. It's more than they spend on military. And yeah, like you say, the debt is now like 36 billion or something.
36 trillion.
Trillion.
That is insane. So over $1 trillion a year in just interest.
And so this is the thing, like that is going to add to their debt as well.
Yeah. It's going to compound, definitely.
Yeah, 37 trillion now.
So the bankers have basically got them by the balls with that. Imagine creating out of thin air $1 trillion a year. That's like,
37 trillion. Somewhere on here it says the interest on that. I'm sure it does. There's so much stuff on here though. It's very confusing. I know what I'll do. I'll just feed this to AI and tell it to give me up-to-date stats. But yeah, it's like 1.3 trillion, I think, and it's like just been growing rapidly. And so this is why Trump is saying like you've got to cut interest rates, because there's something like, I can't remember exactly what it is, but out of this 37 trillion, there's X amount is all being, what do they call it? It's basically being rolled over, but they use a fancy word for it. So it's expiring within these next few months, basically.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so this is why he's like, you've got to cut interest rates, because if interest rates are high, when these last were taken out around COVID time, interest rates were basically zero.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden they're going to be refinancing all their debt at like 4.5% from 0.5%.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just going to cause that the debt payments will go even more crazy.
Yeah. But I reckon the Fed are just like, do what we want.
Yeah, well, I've heard that they're sort of actually, they're actually doing a controlled demolition. They're like deliberately doing it. I don't know why, whether it's like universal basic income, whether it's CBDCs being rolled out.
Yeah.
This is what's going to save you. Like there'll be, and then exactly like you said before, then you've got to do X, Y, and Z to get your universal basic income.
Yeah.
To get your CBDCs to be able to use it. Who knows? But I do think it's like much closer than people.
Me at all. Yeah.
Much closer than people realise. I think it could even be like I keep saying, by the end of 2026, that could be where, boom, huge quantitative easing, crazy amounts of annual deficit. Where's the debt payment?
Interest payments, 1.1 trillion.
Does it say?
Yeah, 2025 on the left.
Why can I not see it? Oh, here.
So
it's ahead of Medicare.
Yes.
More than defence.
It's more than anything else apart from the social security, which is retirement and disability benefits, so welfare.
Yeah, that is mad. So total national debt, social security, interest payments.
I mean, this is like grand scale global usury on like an absurd level.
Yeah, it's just yeah. Like, what is the way out? What is their way out other than universal basic income? Use our special CBDCs, which will save you, and then they get even more control, even more power. There is only one thing that's outside of the system, and that's Bitcoin.
Good question to think about during the week. What is the way out? Yeah. Who knows? I'll have to read Ron Paul's book, End the Fed. That's meant to be a good one.
Is it? Yeah, I've not read that.
On that bright note, should we call it a day?
Yeah.
Right, lovely jubbly. All right then. See you next time for the finished final bit of the chapter.
See you in a bit.